our last speaker for today. We've got Bryan Kerns. Bryan's going to talk about passing the torch and putting fire on the radar of the next generation. So with that, Bryan, it's all yours.
All right, thanks. What a great day. All of you guys have put this on. This is, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's been a surprisingly awesome time on a Zoom setting. So I was excited to come down and be in person with everybody and meet folks that I've talked to on the phone or emailed with for the past couple of years in my endeavors. But this has been awesome. So great job. And then great job to all the speakers. It's been fun, informative. So I'm Bryan Kearns. I'm kind of the oddball. I was the 3% Tennessee one and the 3% other one on the poll this morning. People are probably wondering what's the other doing here. So I'm a high school math teacher. So I've been teaching high school math for about 17 years. But prior to that, I fought wildland fire in the West for a couple seasons full time for the Forest Service. And then when we moved back to Northeast Tennessee, I continued to fight fire with actually the Virginia Department of Forestry, and then jump in as an AD in the summer with the Forest Service, and anybody will have me. And so in those 17 years of teaching math, I would inevitably sneak fire stories into my day. And it's strange how high school students love for me to chase that rabbit for the rest of Algebra 2 class that afternoon. Not surprising. Any good-minded human being would rather hear stories about fire than factoring polynomials. And so they do too. And so 3 years ago, I said, well, there's so much interest in this that I'm going to start an after-school club. And so I started what I called the Pulaski Club. And so 3 years ago, like I said, I put an email on the announcements at school and said, if you're interested in wildland fire or becoming a forester or a park ranger or even a wildlife resources person, come to Mr. Kearns' math classroom at 3 o'clock on Monday, and we'll talk about the Pulaski Club. And so that first meeting, I had about 35 students show up. I only had 28 desks, so I had kids sitting on the floor. I only invited seniors, so that was about 35 seniors who were pretty intrigued and interested about fire and however I advertised it. And so since then, it's really, really developed. And probably the best way I can tell you and describe how it's developed is to tell you the story of two Aarons. And so one Aaron, you can see right here in the background of my first slide. This is Aaron C. She was a senior this past year. She started the Pulaski Club as a sophomore. She came and asked me, she said, can I come? Even though I'm a sophomore, I'm not a senior. I said, sure, yeah, come on. And so she was totally bitten by the bug as a junior. And then her senior year, she was kind of my lead for the Pulaski Club. And now she's totally committed, straight A student, AP student, actually took it upon herself to do her own research project in our fire ecology area. Tell you more about that in just a sec. But now she's at Auburn University studying natural resources, and had lots of offers to go to college and lots of options. So that's Aaron C. And then I want to contrast her story with Aaron D. So he was a senior in my Algebra 2 class 2 years ago, and he came into my classroom with a typical kind of a grumpy, I've not liked school for 12 years, you're not going to make me like it this year. But in fact, he told me the day or two into class that year, he said, I'm going to turn 18 here in a couple of months, and my plan is to just shut it down. I'm not going to graduate. And I said, all right, well, while you're here, I need you to at least pretend to enjoy learning this math. That's what I'm doing. So let's pretend like we're getting it done. And so he said, whatever. So then a couple of days later, I put the poster big size poster in the back of the classroom of the first year of the Pulaski Club. And so Aaron D walks in and he sits down and he turns around and he's like, man, what is that? I said, oh, that's the Pulaski Club. That's my high school firefighter training program here at your school. And he said, oh man, I want to do that. Can I do that? And I said, nah, I'm sorry, man. You're not going to graduate. So, you got to be passing all your classes to be in the Pulaski Club and to participate in our fire trips. And the picture was of us in front of a prescribed fire with 20-foot flames behind us. And it's an awesome picture in my classroom. And he said, well, what if I do pass my classes? I said, well, let's do it. If you get your classes to passing, then you can start coming to meetings and go on that trip right there. And so I'll continue his story here in just a sec. But so it's called the Pulaski Club. And we have several things going on. One of which is we believe it or not, we have an on-campus fire ecology area. And so I kind of had the crazy idea. First of all, I had the crazy idea of starting a fire club at a high school in the city limits. And then second idea I had the next year was I said, hey, would y'all mind if I burned that hillside out at the track instead of paying people to weed eat it 3 or 4 times a year? Could I burn it? And so luckily the fire marshal for the city was an old wildland guy. And he said, man, Bryan, just burn the whole hill. And I said, all right. So we've now divided that hillside into 30 by 60 blocks that we burn periodically. We do season of burn studies on it. And so like we'll burn one unit this October, and then we'll burn the one next to it. We'll wait until February, and then we'll do the next one in March. And we're just doing different burn tactics and different seasons of burn. And the biology students, which is about 400 students every year, all come out to the track, and I do a day with them on good fire versus bad fire, fire effects, why fire is a part of the ecosystem and why it was bad that we took it out of the ecosystem. And then they actually get to see us, me and the Pulaski Club, actually burn one of our units. And so it's mostly grasses and stuff. So it is a pretty good show. And so a lot of kids get hooked there and they want to join the Pulaski Club the next year. And within that, we, Erin C, she took on, there's lots of Tree of Heaven in one of these a couple of these units. And so she said, hey, I want to see if our fires will knock back that Tree of Heaven. And so she took that upon herself to do her own zoomed in research project in this little fire ecology area that we've started. So my research is probably should be put in air quotes after seeing all the presentations today, but it's research nonetheless. And students are getting to see fire do good things. And then they go back in May and they say, man, none of these look like they've been burned, and they've all been burned. And so it's really neat to get good fire, not just on the radar of kids, but in their face. And as well as I, when we all saw our first flames on the ground, we were hooked and intrigued, and it's much, much more exciting than a PowerPoint. And so that's what they're finding out. The other thing that we do, and this is the coolest part, I think, and probably the most unique part, is I actually now take students out as a prescribed fire module. So when I started the Pulaski Club, my grandest vision was to go out to the state park, which is like 5 miles down the road, and watch them burn this grass hillside that they burn every year, watch them burn it from across the road. And so that was my biggest vision. That was the pinnacle of the Pulaski Club. Well, then as it grew in that fall, people started getting wind of you're doing what? You're talking about fire. We'll come out and why don't you come out and do this? And we'll what do you need to come out? And I said, shoot, we don't have anything. I mean, we're jeans and t-shirts in tennis shoes. And so folks started figuring out ways to get PPE headed our direction instead of in the dumpsters. And then hand tools, same way. And eventually we're a fully PPE, tooled up, viable fire resource. And so now we actually go out, one of our big partners is TVA, and we actually go out and we're considered a prescribed fire resource with them. Every person on the prescribed fire module has had S130 and S190 and L180. They have all, and they're all 18. That's the one big roadblock that I run into is you can't encourage kids to turn 18. It's just they are or they're not. And so some of my best ones don't turn 18 till April. And so lots of times they'll get to go as a field observer or something. But again, as I said earlier, just getting out there, being around the machine of fire is an awesome experience. Getting S130 and S190 before you graduate high school is unheard of. So my students are graduating, having seen fire, having run a drip torch, having dug fire line. And some of the state guys we go out with say, I think some of your students have more experience than my new hires do. And so it's rolling and it's going it's just a ton of fun. And then we took a step further this year to start thinking about how could we sort of become our own thing. So, our fire ecology burns on campus that's our own thing. But then most of the other bigger burns we go on, we're kind of invited to, and some of them we're just invited as observers, depending on the agency. But then like TVA and some other folks say, come, we need y'all to burn this east flank. Here's the torch, you and your crew go do it. So now we're starting to make our way up into Bays Mountain Park, which is a 3,900 acre nature preserve that's owned by the city of Kingsport, where Dobbins Bennett High School is, in Northeast Tennessee. And so we did a couple of different things up there this past year. We did a wildfire community preparedness day up there for the staff. So we took the park staff, again, 3,900 acres of hardwood forest on a mountain, and they had zero fire training, zero wildland fire reference at all. In fact, they said they had a fire a few years ago up there, and they got leaf blowers out and were blowing around the wolf habitat, and the wolf habitat has concrete all around it. So me and the students wanted to give them, here's what you do, here's what you don't do. And it was an excellent morning we spent up there. We even put a little bit of fire line in with those folks. And then you can see Aaron C there in the other picture. We did a good fire versus bad fire presentation for the public up there. Of course, COVID made our crowd kind of small, but we still got to talk about good fire versus bad fire. Had tons of questions from the folks saying, well, should we put fire on the ground up at Bays Mountain? And of course, I look around and answer yes, but don't tell anybody I said that. So that's another thing in the works at Bays Mountain Park is they have a food plot up there that they bush hog it 4 or 5 times a year. And that's our next step is we're set to burn that either this fall or spring and start maybe a display at the Nature Center about good fire and how fire can be used. My students are going to create a display on how fire can be used in that food plot instead of machinery or herbicides. We're going to use fire and how that works, and it's safer and cleaner and more fun. And so that's a cool connection that we're trying to promote and get established. So back to Aaron D. So Aaron is, let's see, where is he? Oh yeah, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down. Aaron, Aaron D. He's a high school graduate. And so to complete his story, he's not a wildland firefighter. He's not going to college for forestry, but he is a happy and honorable young man who had the greatest field trips of his life in the Pulaski Club at Dobbins Bennett, and who has cool stories to tell the people around him, who has a high school diploma now. And I think he lays tile and is a plumber. But just to see that kid right there, he was a foster kid growing up. He was in his 10th home when he came to me as a senior. Just to see his life change because of fire in ways that you would never predict is just an awesome, awesome thing. And that's one gift of being a high school teacher, is you get to see lives changed. And whether they end up being, like I said, a PhD forester or a plumber who's raising a good family and being a good dad and husband and a good citizen, it's all about changing and helping the next generation live happy and honorably. And then the rest of these folks are doing some things that are connected. Kelly in, I'll have to give a disclaimer here. I kind of grandfathered him in. He left before, he graduated before the Pulaski Club was officially up and running, but he was in my Algebra 2 class, and he loved to get me off track from factoring polynomials to talk about fires and my fire stories. And so he's now on the Lone Peak Hotshot crew, and he's the lead saw on Lone Peak this summer out in Utah. And then last winter, he worked with TNC on the Sand Hills Burn crew. And then you can just see those names down through it. And I just left the last name with an initial just for those students' anonymity. But they're all graduated from high school, and now some are going on to college. Some have joined the National Guard and are doing fire there or at EMT. Some are just living locally, just being good people, and have a reference for what good fire is, and that fire is a viable part of the ecosystem, and it needs to be here. And so as they grow up and become voters and citizens and parents, and at least they have a good picture of fire in their running slideshow in their head, and maybe even keeps them and their family safe someday. So that's the story of the Pulaski Club. And again, the dichotomy of the two Aarons was really neat. I thought of that yesterday. It's like, I've got some students who are joining because this is going to be their career, and they are stoked about it. And they're going to get scientific and as many degrees as they can, and job. But then I've got some students who just need something to hang their hat on because they're not an athlete, and they're not real academically minded, and they're not, they don't have any other thing to hang their hat on, but man, they can get out and dig in the dirt, and they love it. And maybe they'll find a career out of that, or maybe they'll just find inspiration to stay in school and graduate. So that's a lot. There's a ton more, and I know there's all kinds of questions out there of how in the world do you legally get kids out with the woods on fire? And those questions I can answer in emails or whatever, but are there any questions for now? I think I have like 5 minutes left.
Yeah, Bryan, we've got a few different questions and a ton of just praise for this program and for you for leading it. The first question we got was, how can we encourage other teachers to do something similar in North Carolina? Yeah,
so by the way, I'm only 24 miles from North Carolina border. So I think I'm legally, and I came over there and burned some with Adam this spring. So I think I'm a part of you guys. So yeah, I think the coolest thing would be, again, to let folks see fire. And the learn and burn workshops that you guys do that I've seen, and I know COVID shuts some of those down right now, but when those get back up and rolling, I think advertising that to local high school teachers would be really good. And then say, we can maybe talk about this on your campus, especially a rural high school. I've got another rural high school over in Irwin that I've laid out a fire ecology research area for them. And I'm going to go, me and a couple of students are going to go over there and burn for them this fall and next spring. And so I'm taking the fire ecology on campus idea to them and starting it at their school. And I mean, it doesn't take very much grass to, see effects and just have kids see fire. So I think inviting them out to those learn and burn workshops would be a really good way. And then if you're brave enough to just go say, hey, can we set part of your campus on fire? We know a guy who did it and it was okay.
Nice. We have another question. You mentioned being able to get PPE initially. Have you been able to have these donated annually so that students don't bear that additional cost, or can you obtain it at a reduced cost?
Yeah, so students, it costs $0 to be in the Pulaski Club. They don't have to buy anything, even boots. Believe it or not, White's Boots has donated 12 pair of boots to us that are like second boots, returns. And so even boots, even down to the boots. In fact, and Mystery Ranch donated packs. We actually have the packs that were used in the movie Only the Brave. They sent us the actual movie prop packs. So it's kind of good and bad, because when we show up on a prescribed fire with some of these folks, they look at us and go, you guys look better than we do. And y'all are like students. What's going on? This is not right. And so I just say, well, you just got to ask the right folks and play the old, poor old public teacher card. And people have been awesome to give us stuff. So again, no money out of the student's pocket. And actually, believe it or not, there was no budget in our public school budget for wildland fire crew. And so actually the school didn't really give us much at all either. So most of it's been donations.
Yeah, just getting creative. That's really cool. We do have a question about barriers of liability or insurance. Is it solved by a waiver? Can you answer
No,
that?
there's a
That's a big question.
yeah. So in the CTE world, which is when I was in school, it was a vocational school, right? So this is under the CTE side of the school. So if you imagine a CTE course, welding, pretty dangerous. Nursing can have its dangers. Auto mechanics, all that stuff. So all those different programs have insurance policies that go with them. And there's a fire science portion of that policy that our school has paid for. So they have 7 fire science. They have coverage for 7 fire science students to go out on prescribed fires. So as far as student safety, the liability is covered under that school. And I think it's kind of like, the football team has a similar thing. Hey, your kid's doing this. If they get hurt, our insurance pays for it. So I was surprised to hear that existed, but it does. It's pretty common. Most of the CT programs are structure fire related, but it's under all the same umbrella. Live fire, kids are covered.
Very cool. I think that's all the questions we have right now, and we've hit our time. But thank you so much for presenting and for sharing the stories about the errands. That was really great.
Yeah, cool. And there's the website, a quick link to there, and then there's the little thing you can take a picture of if you want to go it that way.